Hey everybody, welcome to another session with Product School today. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about objectives and key results. First of all, I hope all of you are having a good day and super excited about this topic today. As you can see, I'm going to be your speaker. My name is Sinduja. I am with Microsoft. My role in Microsoft is I'm responsible for the M365 growth acquisition channel. And I've been working with Microsoft for 5 years now, and I'm very happy and super excited to be talking to you guys today. Today we have a packed agenda, so let's get started without further ado. As you can see, we're going to be talking about 4 different things today. We are going to be talking about what is an OKR really, why should you use an OKR within your organization, whichever part of the organization you're in and whichever hierarchy you're in within the organization. Thirdly, we're going to be talking about how do you define OKRs, what are a few things that you need to look out for and be careful about, what are a few themes around the objectives and key results that you would see as you are getting exposed to more of the OKRs within your organization, within your team, etc. And lastly, this actually, even though it's the last, is probably the most important piece of the whole puzzle, is how do you track, measure, and review your OKRs. So without further ado, let's get started with what is an OKR. OKR, as many of you already might have known, stands for objectives and key results. The top, or the topmost piece of the whole puzzle basically is your O, which is your objective, right? Objective is basically you defining where do you want to go, which means for you to define where do you want to go, you need to have a very good understanding of where you are currently and what are your key pitfalls, what are your key learnings, what data do you have from the team, the organization that has been already working with the data, getting everything that you need in place, and for you to then define where do you want to go. And the second piece is your key result, right? Key result basically is along the path of getting from point A to point B, how do I know that I'm getting there? Right? There are multiple ways that you could get from point A to point B. You need to be aware of those multiple ways. Pick one of the ways that works out for you the best and know that you are in the right path of getting from point A to point B. Even though I is not part of the OKR definition, this is probably one of the most important things that defines your OKR, right? So this I stands for initiative. So once you've defined what your objective is going to be, and you kind of have a very rough idea of what are your team and what are the time intervals that you're going to measure your key results, etc., you're then going to start defining your initiatives, or how are you going to get there? Or what should I do to get there, right? You could pick up multiple initiatives, you could pick up multiple features, you could pick up multiple experiments that you want to run over the course of time for you to reach that particular objective. So think about these as your building blocks. All up, you have your objective. Initiative kind of fits somewhere between objective and key result. The reason for this flow is because you'd be able to tell the difference between OKR and I. And then your key results, which is your pit stop, if you will, along your journey, right? And as we keep moving on, I have put together a very simple example, or in plain terms, of how can we define an OKR. Let's say your objective for today is you want to get to Seattle, right? You probably are starting from point A and your destination is going to be Seattle. That's your objective. Your initiative is you want to drive from California to Washington. There are multiple ways, right, that you can get from California to Washington. You can drive, you can take a bus, you can take a train, you can take a flight, etc. You can even catch a cab if that's possible for you to get from California to Washington. You've chosen the path of saying, I want to drive from California to Washington. You probably have multiple other things that you would like to do on the way, and you do have a list of all of those already listed out. That I don't know, I want to drive around the scenic routes, I want to taste the local foods, I want to attend a music festival along the way, etc., whatever it is, right? So you have your objectives defined and you have your initiatives in place. Now comes your key results, which, as I was saying, is going to help you check your direction constantly along the way, just to make sure that you're getting really from California to Washington and you're not going from California to New York. Just an example. I hope you don't go from California to New York and not realize it along the way. Right? But this one basically makes sure that you are looking at your GPS, you're looking at your map, and also, as I already said, in your initiative, you have a bunch of things that you'd like to do, right? You want to taste the local food, you want to look at scenic routes, etc. Along the way, the key result kind of makes sure that you tick all of the things that you wanted to do for your final destination, which is your objective. Simply putting, this literally is your objective, key result, and initiative journey. Moving on to the next part of the conversation today, which is going to be, why should we really use OKRs, right? What's the use of using OKRs? So this probably is somebody's problem when they come into a new project or a new role, or you're a new PM in the team, etc. Right? Everybody's talking to you about how do you define success for whatever you have newly taken on. This comic strip probably lies out what every new PM, new project goes through. So as a new PM, as a new project, as a new initiative, you do want to define success for your project. And if you are clueless, or if you do not know what that means, worry not, because if you are thinking about it from the perspective of an OKR, right? We have a template in place. OKRs are nothing but some kind of a template for you to think about success. So you know where you are, and you have a very rough idea of where you want to go. For you to be able to get from point A to point B, you need to start collecting all the other tools that you're going to use to define that journey, right? It could possibly be all the data that you need to define, all the previous financial charts, sales initiatives, etc., or maybe even the tech platforms, or the technical difficulties that you faced in the past, or if you have the platform ready, etc., for your technical initiatives, everything else in place, right? So once you have all of that in place, you know what you can do with those tools and add-ins or all of your initiatives, etc. So at that point in time, you're able to define your final goal. And once that's done, I would say awesome, because thank you for all the OKRs and all the templates that we have in place, and for also all the super ninja PMs and everybody else, right? Ninja PMs, ninja engineers, everybody who's made this journey possible. So with that, one of the main problems that we want to address with OKRs is close the gap between the definition of strategy itself. Right? Many organizations today, big and small, have this problem, whereas no one knows what the strategy is. No one knows what you are aiming for. Right? You will see, as I keep going down this particular strip, a particular funnel, you will see that as you go down the hierarchy, the understanding of somebody regarding the strategy and being able to say, what is your organizational strategy, kind of decreases, kind of depletes, which is really sad, because unless and until you understand what the strategy of the organization is, what your leader is talking about, how are you going to execute? How are you going to be passionate? How are you going to be motivated to get the results that they are looking for? This is probably the topmost tier. Just think about it as saying there is another tier above this that kind of is defining the strategy, is thinking about where, for example, let's say where Azure needs to go, where team needs to go, etc. Right? So that one person or team of people is going to be your top LT or the senior LT team that says, for FY 2021, this is what I want to do. Trickle down, setting your strategy, right? The top team, which is probably your EVPs or CVPs, who kind of 49% of them today do not understand what the strategy is. Understanding the strategy, setting the strategy is the first step. And then the second one is understanding the strategy and localizing it for your organization to understand. Those are your senior executives. 75% of them do not understand, which is a whooping high number. The directors of execution, or the middle managers, or M2 as we know them, 80% of them do not understand. And who execute on the strategy itself, They execute on the execution or the features that need to happen, the ICs or the individual contributors, and also the managers directly involved with execution. 90% of them do not understand the strategy today. And that's what OKR is trying to get rid of, that says, let's decrease the red bar as much as possible. And as I firstly said when I first started this particular slide is, if I know the strategy, I'm super happy to contribute to the overall success of the organization. And in turn, I'm able to quantify and qualify my personal growth and the potential for growth as well within the organization. Because one thing, all of us have our own personal principles as well, right? Unless and until the personal principle aligns with the professional principle, I have not seen PMs be passionate about what they do. And unless and until the both of them combine, I don't know how many of you have watched the Captain Planet cartoons when we were young, right? It's the combination of powers that really pushes forward the huge growth that you see within huge organizations. And thankfully, the organization that I come from has been investing very heavily in OKRs. And that's probably why I'm able to talk to you this fluently about how do you define success and how can you get from point A to point B, etc. today. Localizing this or breaking it down into something else that you can establish in your own team. We call it the OKR tree, or the different levels of OKR as you see trickling from top to the bottom, right? The first one is the management objective, or the management O, where they add more subscribers. This is an example, by the way. Then as I go through this, you'll probably see that the add more subscribers is an example objective that I've taken for the purpose of this particular slide. So the management objective for today is, I want to add more subscribers to my user base. There are multiple teams that's going to execute on this particular objective. The first team here is said, okay, I'm going to take this objective and see how I can localize it to my team objective, right? Which is saying I can add the people when they start the journey. As you would have already known, throughout a user's life cycle, there are multiple steps, right? There is acquisition, onboarding, engagement, retention, renewal, and reducing churn, etc. So team one here is concentrating on the start of the journey, which really is the acquisition piece of the journey, the first step along the way. And they've said, I want to add more people when they start the journey. Localizing this to the ICs, or the individual contributors in the team, employee one has said, okay, I'm going to take this, and the initiative that I am going to run is going to be that I'm going to add more people by sending them email campaigns or email offers from another campaign. Let's assume there was another campaign that was run, right? And people have said, I'm not interested, but we do have a backlog of their emails. Maybe we can contact them and say, we have a new offer. Would you like to try this instead? So that's what the employee one wants to do here. Employee two, on the other hand, is saying, I'm not going to really go towards people who I do not know if they're going to convert or not. But what I'm going to instead do is tap into the referral network and say, can you send emails to your trusted network with the current subscribers, that is, and say, could you refer us to your friends? You can get 10% off when you renew, or your friend could get 10% off when they renew, etc. And that's what employee two wants to do. And that's what team one is signing up for towards the add more subscribers objective that was set by the management. Now comes in team two, which is also operating on the same objective, right? And it's saying, as I was saying throughout the journey, now it's saying, I want to pick up the last piece of the puzzle, which is people churning. And I want to reduce the number of people who churn out of my system. And in turn, increasing the number of people who were in our ecosystem as compared to the previous fiscal year. Now comes an employee three who says, I'm going to localize it to my initiative. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to send them offers towards end of life and say, let's keep you in the product, right? Take 50% off during your renewal, or have you tried this instead? So employee three really is saying, this is my initiative, and I'm going to start executing and making sure that people do not leave my ecosystem, for example. These are your objectives. These are your initiatives. Now comes key results, right? Now, in every level, there is going to be key results that you need to keep tracking as and when the journey continues. And that's very local to that particular management team or the IC. who's driving that particular initiative or your objective. And this is what a OKR tree looks like. And as you can see, everything is adding up to the common goal of the organization, which is let's add more subscribers. What are really the benefits of an OKR? Right? As I firstly said, you know what you are contributing for. What that means is it's not just the individual contributors in the team, it's not just the managers who are enthusiastic about contributing towards the objective, but you also have very engaged stakeholders. For example, you probably are working with marketing, sales, finance. Everybody knows the objectives, everybody knows the target that you're driving towards. And this, the engaged stakeholders, is a very important puzzle, because unless and until you have engaged stakeholders, you will not be able to move the needle if your objectives or if your measurements of your data, is really dependent on other teams. You have a motivated team, of course, and your Uber vision and your strategy is very well known, and you can relate to the Uber vision, and you're contributing to the Uber vision and strategy. Secondly, you have a very clear path to success. It's not just your team, it's not just your managers, it's your success too. So you have a very focused team, and if I get from point A to point B, I'm good to go. And so you have a very accountable team as well, because previous slide you saw employee 1 is signing up for something, employee 2 is signing up for something, which means employee 1 is a person here and directly accountable to see how those key results or how those objectives are moving throughout the journey of the year. Right? And you have very well-defined goals. So employee 1 is going to send emails, employee 2 is going to send emails, employee 3 is going to send offer discounts, etc. So you have very well-defined goals as well. And you are able to celebrate success in very regular intervals, and you're also able to study in places to improve. Be it, if you have a success story, how can you make it more successful? If you do not have not so successful story, how can you make it a successful story, etc. And you have a very good path for course correction. You can redirect efforts if needed, and you can identify new initiatives which you probably have never thought of before, if not for this particular objective. What I mean by that is, say, for example, employee 1's email campaign is not really working out towards the objective, but employee 3's referral campaign or employee 2's referral campaign is really working out. So let's start redirecting efforts there when employee 1 is thinking about a completely new initiative, which we would not have thought about until we finish the fiscal year. We are then, doing retrospectives, etc. So this is really a very agile method of making sure that you're able to achieve your targets. Localizing your OKRs is very important, as you saw in the tree, because unless and until you're able to do that, you do not know what every employee is signing up for, and you do not have accountability. So the step 1 of localizing your OKRs is you're localizing your LT objective to your team objective, right? So there are a few things that you'd like to consider, or you should be considering, when you are moving from an LT objective to a team objective. The first one is, how are you helping your LT with making this your team objective? So if your LT is subscribing for saying, let's grow my subscriber base, but then you in turn are saying, yeah, I'm just going to send emails to have more people use my features, right? How is that translating to the organization's main objective? You need to think about that. And you also need to think about, what does this mean for the team? What I mean by that here is, if you do not have the team set up for success, or if you do not have the resources that's going to help you or your team meet the LT objective, you need to start thinking about that in this step and communicate that to the LT and make sure they understand and you have the right resources in place so you and your team are set up for success. Each team objective should have their own KRs or key results, and you need to know if you are going to be bumping something. So what I mean by that is, let's say team 1 has 3 employees. Right? Employee 1 is working towards objective that the LT set out. Employee 2 is also working towards the objective the LT set out. Whereas employee 3 is not working towards the objective for that fiscal year, but is really thinking about the long-term planning. What is very important here is, you cannot blanket say everybody works on the objective. You also need to invest on future initiatives or investigations at that point in time if you need to, right? This is the conversation, and this is the trade-off that you need to think about to see, do I have my key results, or do I have everything in place, the initiatives that I have in place, etc., and do I have the people mapped, and will this then translate to what the LT is looking for, and can I let my employee 3 do whatever they are doing, or do I have to pull them out and push them into some other objective driven journey, right? Step 3 is defining the initiatives that's needed for the KR. So how do I break down the objectives into workable features here? And how do I break it down into such a way that I can have regular checkpoints with my initiatives that says Q1, let's talk about it. Q2, let's talk about it, etc. So you need to break down the initiatives also in such a way to make sure that you have meaningful conversations. The second part of step 3 is making sure that you have your infrastructure in place to support all of these initiatives. Just a plain text example, right? Employee 1 wants to send emails to people who have not signed up in the past. What will you do if you do not even have the emails in place? So let's start thinking about that. So let's start building the infrastructure in place for us to get the email addresses as well. Step 4 is very important. How do you measure your KRs? Do you have the data? Do you have the Power BI dashboards set up? Do you have experimentation plans in place? Do you have infrastructure for experimentation? Think about all of that. So these are your 4 main steps to localize your KRs. Thirdly, how do you define your OKRs? What are things that you want to look out for in your OKRs? I will talk to you about a few things that you want to think about when you define your OKRs. You want your OKRs to be outcome oriented. Like, what are you really trying to achieve with your OKRs? So as I said, your management probably set out saying, I want to increase my subscriber base. And you're like, I want to increase feature adoption. Right? It's not really aligned, nor is it going to drive any kind of an outcome for the LT. So think about outcome-oriented approaches as well for your KRs. Are they measurable? Can you have them talk about this initiative in very regular intervals? Do you have data to support your claim, your target, etc.? Have a very balanced approach for your OKRs. You want to think about it from both of a customer and a business result. It's not just about driving consumer base. It's also making sure that your consumers or your customers are very happy with your product. So have a very balanced OKR when you define, because one organization will not have one OKR. They will have multiple of them. So have a very good balance between customer and your business OKRs. Be aspirational. If you think you can make, I don't know, $10,000 for sure, right? Sign up for 20,000, sign up for 25,000 as your OKR with an internal. So the way that I have seen teams do it is they break it down into 2 phases. They say, I'm going to sign up for 10K as my sure shot, and this is what I'm going to report up to finance and say my team is signing up for. But internally, I'm going to set up a team goal of $25,000 subscribers, whatever is your definition of hypothesis that you come up with, right? And say, this is going to be my internal goal. So be aspirational. And can you do more with your objective, or is it very specific to your fiscal year? Think about that as well. And last but not the least, you need to have an accountable team, and you need to have a team owned, team generated, and you need to be sure that you have somebody's name associated with your KR, and they are helping you drive that to completion. Right? A few common objectives that you would see as you go down through your KR journey, or the way that you can think about defining your KRs for them to be more balanced across the organization, could be, think about your business growth, growing your existing business. Right? That's your first one. Think about making your user experience better so that it resonates more with how the customer is interacting with your product. Think about making your process better so they do not have a lot of lag time. They have a better resiliency. They have a better, 99, 999, whatever you define for your services, etc. Think about your employees. Make sure that your employees or the people you work with are happy. This does not have to be an external facing here. This could be something very internal to your team to make sure you do not have many people leaving the team, or you have more people joining the team, etc. Customer OKRs, these are directly customer facing OKRs where you're able to address customer escalations and talk to the customers directly and solve their problems. Have a continuity OKR. So you're able to make sure that your services, your clients, your processes decrease in the outages that they have today. As I said, we have themes, which means we probably also have pitfalls for the KRs. So when you define your KRs, watch out for these. You want your KR to be clear and you want it to be very well worded. So anybody who's reading the KR is like, yep, that makes sense to me. You do not want it to be poorly worded. When you say increase the number of subscribers, be sure, are you talking about consumer subscribers? Are you talking about enterprise subscribers? Are you talking about very small businesses? Things like that. If you have these multiple different segments, right? And then break it down and say, these are going to be my KRs. There are, you would see that the second one and the third one is really go hand in hand. Right? Do not have KRs that depend or do not have objectives that depend on another objective's success. So what I mean by that is you do not want your objectives to show results only if another team's objectives are kicking off or only if they are performing. Right? This is going to make you look like you're not having a lot of progress. And also the problem with this one is you will have a lot of dependencies, which means when you start defining your OKRs, make sure you know what your dependent OKRs are and have a very good alignment with them, saying, you will finish this, then I will pick it up. So you can define it for the fiscal year, but make sure that you communicate saying, I will not show you any revenue or I will not show you any movement in my target until this one is finished, etc. Do not be a frog in the well. Right? You want your objectives to be aspirational. You do not want them to be a rinse and repeat of what you've done the previous year or what another team is doing or what you think you can do, or you're just thinking about it yourself. Socialize. Talk to your other PMs, talk to your other engineering managers, talk to your other teams who already have very well defined OKR processes and see what all they have taken into consideration before defining objectives. That's very important. And lastly, do not copy paste somebody else's objectives as your KRs, or do not ask them to copy paste yours, because everybody's business is different. And what got you here is probably not going to get you there. And it's the same thing, right? What got them there is probably not going to get you where you are. So just do not copy paste, make sure that it makes sense and resonates for your business, for your team goals. The last piece, as I was saying, is making sure that you track, measure, and review your OKRs. So this is a very simple table, if you will, of tying it back to the example that we had of the tree OKRs, right? Team 1 is signing up for growing your business, and their key results is get many people to try. The target is saying, I want to have 50 people try this particular fiscal year, or however you define calendar year, fiscal year, etc. This table basically takes into account month by month breakdown of saying, what does it look like and how many people have I acquired in that month, etc. So what I'm showing you here is saying, I've acquired 3 people in September, and for the whole of Q1, which is fiscal year, right? July, August, September, I've acquired 8 people. From here, what you can then do is have some kind of a projection mapping that says quarter 1 was 8, quarter 2 might be 16, quarter 3 might be 24, and things like that, if it is a linear growth, right? Or also take into account your seasonality and say, November, December, January, or like the holiday time frame, I've been able to grow my business 2-fold. So maybe you'd be able to grow to 24. Have all of those projections in place and say what is going to be your actual and what is going to be a target per month as well. And the same thing goes for team 2, which is sustain your business. Your KRs send emails towards the end of trial, right? Your target is, I want to stop churning 40 people. September, I've been able to do 8, and this quarter, I've been able to do 10 people. Great. If you're going through with the same linear growth, you'll probably be able to reach your target. But do you want to do some more so you can do more than your target? Start thinking about it now. This particular table or this particular approach helps you think more than what you've already signed up for. So as for OKR journey, this is a very rough map of what does it look like and how do you want to track your OKRs, or how do you want to track your initiatives, or how you want to measure your KRs as well, right? You have a vision and mission statement that you've set. From there, you've picked up strategy, or your LT has defined your strategy. From there, you've been responsible, or your team leads have been responsible in defining the OKRs. You are discussing progress. This is probably, if you are an IC watching, this is probably something that you are going to be very actively driving on a day-to-day or week-to-week, month-to-month, however, fortnight-to-fortnight, whatever basis. Right? Discuss progress on a very regular basis. You analyze your OKRs, implementation, and your results in as part of your progress discussions, and use the lessons learned to make changes. So this is a very rigorous cycle that needs to keep going on for your OKR journey. Be it every week, be it every month, etc. You cannot keep redefining OKRs, which is not really the purpose of what you want to do, but you can keep redefining initiatives. And just a very rough idea of what you can do and how you can run this on a bi-weekly basis. This is an example template that I have put in place, which has proven useful for not just within an organization, but also for your internal or individual OKR that you are defining for your success as well. It does not have to be drive business growth. It could also be get promoted, or have more free time, or have more vision documents written, etc. So this is an example template that you can track in place. Start with your objectives that you're trying to achieve, and list the key results that you want to go for. Break it down into return on investment for every quarter that you want to have, which is, as I was saying, you have a target every quarter that you want to achieve. And all the top issues or the concerns or noteworthy performances that you've come across so far. When you first start the journey, this is probably going to be just like a status update of what you're doing with your OKR. But as you start rolling it out, as you have production data, as you're experimenting with results, etc., you probably start putting in data analysis into this. This is a table of initiatives that you want to run, saying my initiative item 1, my target is going to be 20 people that I'm adding via this particular initiative. What is your rollout schedule? Like, where are you in the rollout schedule? I'm in the planning process. And do you have any blockers, or do you want to take down any notes that you've learned so far? No blockers. It looks like I am on track to roll it out in the production data that I have set up for. And this one is really the projection map that I was talking to you about in the previous slides, that says, what does it look like every month? Like, your initiative 1, initiative 2, what does a cumulative growth look like? Your actual versus target that you've achieved so far. This one is a very good understanding or a snapshot of everything that you have been working towards, and ties very nicely into like a one slide view of every hard work that your team has been doing for this whole quarter, whole fiscal year, etc. Right? And every LT, everybody would really appreciate this view, because this gives them everything they're looking for in one spot. They do not have to keep looking in different locations, but they can just go to this one slide and be like, okay, this makes a lot of sense to me. So with that, thank you so much for taking the time today. I hope you enjoyed the talk. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me via my LinkedIn profile. Yeah, I hope you have a very good rest of the day. Thank you once again. Have a good day.